The South African Digital Marketing Podcast is made in collaboration with Sean Lutz. Coming up in this episode of the South African Digital Marketing Podcast.
It's the only thing that keeps me up at night. It's like, but are they going to think I'm cool? We know that marketing teams are shrinking. We know that budgets are shrinking.
30 hours is a huge thing.
So yes, that is probably true, but the guy is a developer and understands the technology side of things.
I have a team of 8 people doing this. Why would I need a tool?
Why would I need a tool? What is going on here?
I can imagine just that kind of sigh of relief.
Welcome to the South African Digital Marketing Podcast. My name's Terrence Mentor, and I'm a digital marketer who's on a mission to meet the best, brightest, and most interesting marketers across the country. Today's guest is Michelle Geere. She's the CEO of Adbot, which is her homegrown Google Ads AI tool. That's right, built right here in South Africa. I met Michelle last year at a marketing conference and was just blown away at her ability to simplify complex ideas and tasks. But I really wanted to understand what it takes to build and market a marketing tool in South Africa. So we started our conversation with Michelle telling us what Adbot actually does.
Adbot was basically built for lean marketing teams. So people who are doing all the work, the guys who are doing the Google Ads and the Facebook content and the content creation and everything. And they don't have any kind of like resources or support. We know that there's a global statistic, 78% of global marketers are saying that their teams consist of 1 to 3 people. So we know that marketing teams are shrinking. We know that budgets are shrinking. And so Adbot was created for those guys who are needing tools in order to deliver the same results that they did when they had agencies or teams of 10 to do the same workload and get the same results. So Adbot uses AI to basically automate the campaign management process of Google Ads. And Google Ads consist of search, but also YouTube and banners, etc. And we'll talk a little bit later about how that works. But essentially, it does what you are supposed to do for 30 hours a week as a marketer, optimizing your campaigns. That's what Adbot does. And it just uses AI and automation in order to do that.
It does seem like this is coming at such a good point in like marketing history, because you'll talk to people with the title of like heads of marketing or like chief marketing officer, head of brand. And you're like, oh, you're the head of the marketing department. That's great. How many people in the department? And it's like, just me. I'm the head and there is no body. So these tools feel very crucial at this time to at least take off a lot of that. I mean that 30 hours is a huge thing, especially when it comes to something like Google Ads, which in my mind feels very complex. Like it feels like you need a specialist person just for that. And does Adbot kind of fill that gap?
Yes, so Google Ads is complex, but before I get into kind of like the Google Ads side of things, I do have to kind of like also say we're also seeing this scenario. So I think most marketers will recognize the scenario when I say your boss will come to you after a weekend away with his friends and he just generated a song using AI and he's now come to these marketers and he's like, listen, we must use AI to create our music, right? And
yep.
or he or she, whatever, has created like an image, less she's than he's, but we'll get into that another day. They would have created like an image, right? And he wants you as the marketer to use this image on your social media because AI is now the thing, right? So these marketers are sitting there going like, oh my gosh, I can't, like, how you know? And they're sitting with this kind of like a bit of a struggle because the stakeholders, bosses, whatever, they are saying use AI because they can experience it in some way. But the marketer knows that it's not just as easy as using this tool and plugging it in. Like it doesn't work that way. And in a lot of cases, there's a lot of steps that goes in between using AI and then getting to the final results. And I think, you know, what's really interesting about Adbot is that it is those steps. And I think a lot of us have seen these guys on LinkedIn going like, spent like 5 minutes creating a Claude prompt, and now all my Google ads are automated. So yes, that is probably true, but the guy is a developer and understands the technology side of things.
Yes. I was going to say, like, it does feel so overwhelming when you see all those posts. I mean, literally just the other day, I was like, let me just search Claude for marketers. Like, let's just see what happens. And the amount of variation in videos and articles and where do you even start? And unless you are already massively in the world, it's not a case of, well, I was a copywriter that's worked his way up in the marketing world, and now suddenly I can be an AI developer. It's not as simple as people want to make it seem. So I 100% agree with you. And so Adbot kind of fills that gap.
So exactly. So Adbot is kind of like the AI introduction that gives you the tools that will be able to answer that question of let's use AI in marketing in a way that is very simple. You don't have to roll your eyes. It gives you the same results, but you're not creating kind of songs on the weekend, etc. So it's a very easy actual intro into the AI world. You don't have to be a AI developer, like you said, in order to be able to use the tool. The whole point of Adbot is that it takes you 10 minutes, and that's the 10 minutes you have between creating content plans, running to the next meeting, setting up a photo shoot for the next thing. So you set it up in 10 minutes, and then the campaign kind of like takes over and runs from there. You have to check in on an ongoing basis to make sure it still fits with your strategy. But that optimization part is already done for you. And you can go back to the boss and go like, we are using AI in this way. And yeah.
Secretly in the background, you're actually using Adbot. I think also if you just looking through the Adbot website, it does feel like it's a pressure releasing space. It feels like a lot of like, we'll manage this for you. This gets managed for you. This is like, don't worry about this section. This is all you have to do. Like, here's the 3 steps you have to do to get sorted. And I can imagine, I'm not a marketing leader. Hopefully one day I'm going to get into that space, but I can imagine the marketing leaders that I speak to who are doing a million things in a day and making hundreds of decisions, throughout a week. Having someone or a tool go, I'm just taking this off your plate completely. I can imagine just that kind of sigh of relief that comes
Absolutely.
in. And I'm not sure if that was part of the messaging plan that you had, but there's definitely that sense of that.
Yeah. So one of the campaigns that we ran that really did well for marketers was we explained how much headspace it gives you, right? So a lot of marketers would go obviously through their to-do list, and so their to-do list will contain Google Ads, optimize keywords, do keyword research, do competitor analysis. So those would be tasks that would be in that space. So instead of all of that, once you've implemented Adbot, you can just go check results, make sure that it still matches with strategy. If everything is good, then move on. Obviously, if there's an issue, you have to drill a little bit deeper, and our team is there to help you out. And but yeah, essentially, when you give a marketer headspace, it allows them to be strategic and creative, and that is what humans are really good at. That's what marketers are really good at. That's why they chosen this field, is so that they can be strategic, because they know things about brand, about messaging that tools like AI doesn't really know, and that will never be replaced, I think. Well, not immediately, but like the stuff that the day-to-day kind of like optimization, humans aren't good at that anyway, so just give it to a machine. That's kind of like where
I love that. So it's like using AI to actually help you do the human things better, as opposed to doing the robot stuff better.
Totally. So it takes that time away from you where you kind of like in the details of like what keyword I must add. And it gives you headspace in order to go, okay, so we've got search covered, and that's part of our conversion funnel. What does the top of the funnel look like? What channels are we going to use? What is the messaging on the top of the funnel, medium funnel, and below the funnel? Because those messages all have to be different. What's interesting about AI at the moment is it's becoming a very much a scale situation or a volume situation. So instead, in the past, you would create specific customer or audiences that you target. At the moment, you're just loading as much information into that machine as possible, and all those kind of like the AI will figure out what target audience will match what creative based on the performance of that creative. So it's really a quite an interesting, exciting space for us to be in as well. And you'll see over the last couple of years, we've increased, obviously, to stay on top of how Google's AI has increased. So in the past, you would have like two, and when I say the past, last year, you would have, you would two headlines that would rotate, and then you have multiple kind of like ads in Google Ads. Now one ad has like 15 headlines. It has about 5 descriptors. And so that is like just how the volume game is going to work. Now imagine you have to manage 15 different headlines, check which one's working, move it over, add more money behind. It's just not worth the time that you're spending on it.
Yeah, so I guess if you're thinking about yourself as even as an individual marketer, and you think about what your hourly rate would be if you're working in a team or if you're working in an agency,
Exactly.
how much time are you spending doing this manual work? Then the costs become very, very clear. I would love to get to talk about the actual creation of Adbot as a tool, as an app.
Right.
It really does feel that marketers were involved in the creation of it. And I'm not sure if you yourself have like a marketer's background or the people involved. It really feels like it's speaking directly to someone like myself, wants to be more creative, wants to, enjoys this kind of the numbers part of it, but doesn't want to spend 90% of my day fiddling around with optimization. Is that true? Were there marketers involved in the initial creation?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I come from a background of digital marketing. So you remember Glue, Hello Computer, all those older agencies who are now all bought over by Ogilvy and can't remember the other one. But yeah, that was my entire career, was in digital marketing. And I absolutely love the fact that there was this channel called search, and it would give you kind of like a lot of impact when you were delivering services for clients. But I hated doing it, and nobody in my team loved doing it. And then the guy would be sick, and then he wouldn't optimize. And so it was just always an absolute nightmare. And so 6 years ago, we started building out Adbot 6 years ago. That was before ChatGPT even existed. And we couldn't find the skill set in South Africa that combined Google and AI. And so we found a team in Sweden that was looking at a similar situation. So myself and my co-founder, Joshin Rugaba, he is my co-founder, also comes from a digital marketing background, had an agency called Aikidio, then moved to started Sprouts, all of that. So you can see like there's a lot of input from agency people, identifying the problem at first, and then started building out and creating the problem, creating the answer to the problem. So the team in Sweden, we started very kind of like high level. We started only with Google search ads. So those were the copy ads. 6 years ago, Google was a lot more simple than what it is today. There was definitely no AI involved to the extent that there is today, and it wasn't volume based. So there was very rudimentary kind of like structures of ads and certain things that you needed to optimize. Since then, things have really kind of rocketed, and it takes a lot of time to actually stay ahead of like, what is Google improving on, and how does Adbot use our AI to make Google's AI a lot better? Because that's essentially what we do, right? Is that optimization helps Google understand what is your audience and what is your target and what is your conversion, and it makes it better. You'll hear a lot like people say when it comes around to AI, garbage in, garbage out, and essentially that's the thing, right? So Adbot helps not only write and create and optimize, but it also makes sure that everything is streamlined for Google to understand and use specifically. But yeah, it's like back in the day, it was so simple.
And just constantly having to constantly having to keep up. And I guess again, this is where these tools like Adbot are so important, because we're having to spend so much of our time like working out what the new algorithm is doing and working out what the new tools are available, that we honestly don't have time to actually do the
Totally.
work sometimes. You did mention that you didn't find the expertise in South Africa to merge these two worlds of Google
Yeah.
search and AI. Were there any other challenges about being a South African company developing a tool like this in the country?
Obviously, one of the biggest challenges is that it is something completely new. So everybody's using an agency or a freelancer. And 6 years ago, when I walked into a marketer's office and I said, listen, AI is going to do this for you, they were like, this girl has been smoking her socks.
I have a team of 8 people doing this. Why would I need a tool?
Why would I need a tool? What is going on here? So yeah, it's so at the time 6 years ago when we started developing it, it was really hard to sell. We nobody understood what it was that we were doing, and since ChatGPT came in, since Claude kind of like showed like all these prompts and how you can do things, a lot more people are understanding what it is that we're delivering. And so yeah, so that was I think that was one of our biggest challenge. We had this magical tool, nobody understood what it was for, and we almost had to wait until that wave came so that we can start selling and tell people that this is the tool to use for the future. Or you can keep on using the 8 people. But
So you had to wait for the CEOs to come back from holiday with their AI generated song before people could really to understand.
People understood.
Yeah, but and I mean, I'm really curious because there aren't loads and loads of marketing tools that are actually built in South Africa, and I'm wondering if there was any benefits actually as well to having Adbot designed and built in the country.
So the first kind of like biggest benefit is the fact that over the last 6 years, our tool is trained on data from South Africa. So any other tool that you use will have either UK or US data training, and our landscape is very different, right? So competitiveness in the UK versus the US is totally different. Like they are so competitive. Click-through rates are super high. You have to be super smart from using top of the funnel to conversion, which is at the bottom of the funnel. In South Africa, it's slightly different. We almost jump from the top of the funnel straight into the conversion part, especially when you're smaller businesses. Like the top part is kind of all kind of organic, and then you just focus financially on the bottom part. And so that's very unique, I think, to South Africa. And because of money constraints and because of the structure of, I don't know, our culture, maybe, I don't know. But that was really interesting about developing a South African tool. And I also think that a lot of the tools that are developed overseas, they make everything available to you. So they make available, like, you can do TikTok and you can do Bing and you can do Google and you can do whatever. And obviously those choices are great. But in South Africa, for example, Bing is not a big player from a search perspective. Quite frankly, it has maybe 3%, if that much. And so to put a whole marketing budget behind Bing in South Africa right now, when it's not even kind of like performing at any scale, I don't know if that's necessarily like a great idea. And so our tool considers what is available for our marketers and what is in their kind of like channel choice set. And we'll do whatever is in that channel choice set, we'll do really well. And when it expands into Bing or whatever, or another channel, then we'll say, okay, let's bring that channel on. Is it supporting our conversion? Because results is a really big thing for us. We really, really want to make sure that clients are getting results. And if we are just adding tools so that you can spend money so that we can make more money, that is not our game. Our game is to make sure that you're spending money and you're getting the conversions. And these are the tools based on South Africa or the environment that you're in that is going to give you those results.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I was going to say, knowing that budgets are small and we don't have the resources, whether it's manpower or financially, to like spread ourselves thin across every single available digital channel. So to be able to do, like you say, one thing really well and nail it, and in a way where I can actually go back to the CFO of the company and go, I spent this in Adbot and I got this back. That's a huge
Exactly.
thing nowadays. You really gotta make sure that every cent has some sort of return, or at least you can show the function of that rand that you spent.
Absolutely.
And maybe this also kind of takes me to my next question, because I'm really curious about the kind of marketing that Adbot does itself, like for the company would do for the tool, because you're marketing to marketers. Is it like chefs making food for other chefs? Are you more nervous? Do you feel more
Certainly
pressure?
is.
Because we like, I know what you're doing. I see what you're doing in the background. I know the game you're playing. I can see the hook you're trying to get me in. Do you feel like that pressure with you?
Oh my gosh, I feel so much pressure to create a Cannes lion when it comes to advertising. And so in the last years we understand the bottom of the funnel really well, and the Google ads and all of those. And just last week I've actually briefed a content creator on some really interesting campaigns that we just want to play and experiment with. But yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard when it comes to marketers. And I am always very nervous because we have kind of like two sets of people that uses our tool. We have the marketers who use it, and then we have the smaller businesses, and they're almost kind of like easier to market to because they're also using like the same things we're using. And so they go, okay, I see you're doing the same as I am, and therefore it's fine. I think when it comes to marketers, like we want to speak their language. We want them to make them feel that we understand what they're going through, but it's the only thing that keeps me up at night. It's like, but are they going to think I'm cool?
Yes. I get it. Oh man, because there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors and magic to what we do, right? As marketers, and
Absolutely.
it's I always find it interesting when I have conversations about ad campaigns or branding with other non-marketers, and I'm like, oh, but you can tell why they did it that way because they're trying to access this person, and they don't see it because why would they? It's like there's no way that they
Exactly.
would understand the full of it. So to be able to create a campaign, I can just imagine the panic of going, I'm trying something new, and I hope that they see how brave I'm being, as opposed to maybe, and like not necessarily the quality or the stat, like the like really capturing them, but I'm hoping that they see it and go, that's interesting. I want to do it myself, but that's interesting. I can imagine that's a whole game you must have to play with your
Totally,
marketing.
totally. And a lot of times it actually causes paralysis, to be honest with you. So,
Yeah.
well, yeah, we'll speak again when I win the lion.
Yes, of
Jokes.
course. Yeah, I mean, I have heard other people say that sometimes marketing to marketers is actually a little bit easier because we're a little bit like forgiving. Like we let things slide a little bit more. I'm not sure if that's true necessarily. I think if knowing how judgy I am, if anyone is like even half as judgmental as I am over marketing campaigns, I can imagine it must be a very hard thing. But then maybe if you wouldn't mind letting us know, I mean, obviously Google Ads is an important channel for Adbot. It would be crazy if it wasn't. But are there other
Exactly.
channels where you're finding a little bit of success, where, especially with other marketers, where you're finding actually they really resonate and engage with us in these particular channels?
So there's two kind of like points of success, which I think is something I'd love to chat about. And we've kind of like started exploring all the other parts. So search is obviously like our bread and butter, and we understand it really well. But we also understand that there is a job to be done on the top of the funnel, which is usually like your video content, your ads, banner ads, etc. And so we completely understand that part. Now, in the past, and I'm explaining it like how agencies work versus how our tool works so that we can understand a little bit more about how the AI works within Adbot. So in the past, you would brief your agency, they would go to DB360, which is a Google tool, and they would book YouTube and they would book the banners and they will book in-app and they'll book shopping. So you'll have all these different channels, which essentially runs in silos, right? And I think two things about that specific plan is like it's really expensive. And I always find that there's no kind of like shared insights across those channels. Now, a bit of a trick or a skip or a shortcut on those channels is something called PMax from Google. And what we've actually found is that PMax really supports our search campaigns. So we have a separate kind of like search campaign, and PMax then drives the top of the funnel, which gives those conversions a lot more kind of results, which is great. So PMax, just for those guys who don't know what it is, so PMax is like all the Google suites, so YouTube, display, shopping, in-app, all the tools that you have available to you. It actually like puts all your content out on all those channels, and then it actually speaks to each other and it drives like best performance across those channels. And then, as I said, that works really well when you then kind of like look at the conversion on Google search. So PMax for us has been magical when we're looking at bigger budgets and clients who are looking to do a lot more in top of the funnel versus like at the bottom. So that's really great. And our tool includes PMax for certain guys. Budget is always a thing. If you have a really small budget, you can't do PMax. Like it needs data in order to build and all sorts. So we always recommend like 10,000 Rand and more on PMax in order to actually get some good results. But yeah, PMax, magical. I love PMax. I can't tell you how much I love it. It's amazing.
You see,
then,
that's the kind of insights that you get when you talk to someone who's doing the work. Sorry, you were saying there was another one.
Yeah. So the other thing as well, and this is kind of like a bit of a secret to all the marketers out there. Last year, there was a lot of changes on Google, right? And one of the biggest things I think that we've noticed is that if you are able to measure and have Google see what is a conversion within your ecosystem. So in other words, on GA4, Google Tag Manager, Merchant Account, if Google is able to see what a conversion is, it actually performs better with its AI in giving you more of what they think your conversion is. Now, I know it sounds really simple, but it's really hard to set up. Obviously, it's Google. They made it super hard. I don't understand why. But so Google creates automated or default kind of like conversions. And what you'll see if those default conversions is something like add to cart instead of purchase, then Google will get you more add to carts than what they would get you purchase, which is interesting. And we've seen that actually play out in some of our clients' work. So measurement, making sure that Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, Merchant Account actually speak to each other and Google understands what a conversion is. That is absolutely critical. And we've built a tool that actually does that now for us. And we have some specialist data guys that help us implement that. And yeah, that with PMax and with search, you basically have a whole media house that you can run for yourself from your office instead of having an agency and 10 people.
I am hearing some agency people screaming outside my window at the moment. But maybe just one last question: if you are someone who has a great idea for a tool, or maybe you're someone in the position you were in, you're a marketer, you're doing this work that's repetitive, you wish there was a tool out there that you could fix, you could create to do it yourself. Maybe, do you have any piece of advice for that person about, do they create the tool and then find a way to monetize it? Do they do it just for themselves? And if they do decide to monetize it for themselves, maybe one or two pieces of advice about getting yourself going and motivated to actually follow through and create the business.
So I love that question because I love that kind of stuff, right? So, and AI in its entirety is kind of like bringing um, the ability to create tools and put it out there a lot easier. And you as a non-developer can actually build that. So my advice would be use something like Lovable or Claude, build out the tool for yourself, work it and use it for yourself. Then get about 2 or 3 other marketers to use it as well, give you feedback. If they can't live without it, you have something, and then monetize it. So, and then once you kind of like monetize it, you start selling it into the bigger guys. But that's usually kind of like the startup role, is like to build something usually that you need. Once you are using it, you get 2 or 3 other people to use it. If they really like it, you start going like, oh, okay, this is something that, people are interested in. It solves a problem for someone, and people are willing to pay money in order to have that problem solved. And so all of those points are what investors call kind of like product market fit. So when you have a product, you are using it, 3 or 4 people are using it, and some people are wanting to pay money for it, then investors will go like, you have product market fit, and then hopefully they'll invest some money in it. But it is hard. It's so hard. It's so hard.
That's it for this episode of the SA Digital Marketing Podcast. A big thank you to Michelle for giving us her time. And of course, you can keep the conversation going by connecting with her on LinkedIn. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening and watching it, so that you don't miss the next episode, which will be coming out in a couple of weeks. You'll find all the links to do that in the show notes. Thanks for listening. This was the South African Digital Marketing Podcast.